Okay, friends, good morning. Let us start with this metta recital. May all beings be happy and secure. May all beings have happy minds, whatever living beings there may be, without exception, weak or strong, long, large, medium, short, subtle or gross, visible or invisible, living near or far, born or coming to birth. May all beings have happy minds. Let no one deceive another, nor despise anyone anywhere. Neither from anger nor ill will should anyone wish harm another. As a mother would risk her own life to protect her only child, even so towards all living beings, one should cultivate a boundless heart. One should cultivate all the world, a heart of boundless loving friendliness, above, below, and all around, unobstructed, without hate or resentment, whether standing, walking, sitting, lying down, or whenever awake. One should develop this mindfulness. This is called divinely dwelling here, not falling into erroneous views, but virtuous and endowed with vision, removing desires for sensual pleasures. One comes never again to birth in the womb. With this metta thought in mind, let us begin our practice. At this time, focus your mind on the breath without verbalizing, conceptualizing, but just feeling the breath. Breathe in and breathe out. You notice the breath is rising and falling, rising and falling. As we pay total undivided attention to this function of rising and falling, the body, the breath, and the mind becomes calm, relaxed, and peaceful. At that time, our greed, clinging, craving, thought will not arise. Instead, the mind remains focused on the breathing, the feeling of breath, perception of breath, attention to the breath, consciousness of breath, also rise and fall along with the rising and falling of our breath. And this is a very normal, natural experience. We just have to pay attention to the breath to notice all this happening in their own way, in their own right, without words or concepts. As we gain peaceful, relaxed experience, also we experience the feeling of metta. Not words of metta, not image of metta, but the feeling of metta. We feel that we are friendly with everybody. Therefore, resentment does not have space or place in the mind. So resentment fades away. When the resentment fades away, metta dwells in the mind, we experience more relaxed, more calm, more peaceful state. This may be sometimes very conducive to the feeling of sleepiness and drowsiness. When sleepiness and drowsiness appears, we feel welcoming it because it is so comforting, soothing, sweet. At the same time, even though it is very, very difficult, sometimes at the last second you fall asleep. So at that time we keep our eyes open, take deep breath, hold it, and breathe out slowly several times for sleepiness to fade away and arouse our spiritual energy. Think of spiritual urgency, that we have very short life, we have very great opportunity to practice. We gain very rare opportunity to practice meditation, and we should not waste that moment by sleeping. We stay awake, alert, mindful, and energetic. Then the body and mind will get little more restless because energy can work too hard. There may be excess energy, and then just the opposite of sleepiness can arise. Restlessness and worry arise due to our incomplete or incorrect action in the past or the planning for the future, and both of them to be avoided and stay on the present moment. In the present moment, we notice the breath, feeling, perception, thought and consciousness rising and falling, rising and falling. The mind doesn't vacillate between the past and the future. It remains in the middle, the present moment. And there we notice rising and falling of everything. With all this, we may still have some doubt about our own success, question whether we can achieve this or not. At that time we must think of the qualities of the Buddha. Buddha was so enlightened, pure and clean in heart and mind, that he introduced this system from his own personal experience. Therefore, he has not made any mistake. The message is clear and pure and powerful. The community of Sangha, the members who have been following this path, have achieved their success. Therefore, this instruction given by the Buddha is very true, natural, pure, and powerful, and effective. Therefore, when we follow that message, we too can gain success. We have already been successful in overcoming four of our hindrances. And therefore, even the last one, called doubt, we can overcome. Once we overcame our doubt and all the other hindrances, we feel very glad and full of joy and happiness. That leads to concentration. When we gain concentration, the mind is sharp, clear, and more powerful. This clear, sharp, powerful mind can see things changing in the most subtle state. Finest and sharpest changes we can notice. Notice the changes of the same thing that we saw earlier. The breath, feeling, perception, thought, and consciousness. They change all the time. The awareness of changes helps us to get rid of our greed, hatred, and delusion, the most fundamental defilements, the root of all defilements. And therefore, with this, we continue our practice and see how much we can gain. By means of this meritorious deed, may I never join with the foolish, may I join always with the wise, until the time I attain Nibbana. May the suffering be free from suffering, may the fear struck be free from fear, may the grieving be free from grief, so too may all beings be. From the highest realm of existence to the lowest, may all beings arisen in these realms, with form and without form, with perception and without perception, be released from all suffering and attain to perfect peace. Excellent, excellent, excellent. Now it is time for friends to ask questions.
Good morning, Bhante.
Yeah.
So there is a question. What is the relationship between the craving and volition?
Relationship between craving and volition. Volition is a general term, that is a will. Will can become both for craving and for not craving. Volition is will or wholesome or unwholesome. Sometimes it is called chanda, and chanda also has two sides, kusala chanda and akusala chanda, wholesome will or unwholesome will. The question is the difference between volition and will, right? Craving.
And relationship.
Volition and craving. Now, wholesome volition does not have craving. Unwholesome volition has craving. Unwholesome volition has craving, and that causes suffering. Wholesome volition doesn't have craving. That helps us to get rid of suffering. Wholesome volition is the path to liberation. Unwholesome volition is the path to samsara. Whatever we do to exist in samsara has underlying the tendency of craving, desire. Whatever we do without underlying tendency, that is wholesome volition, which helps us to liberate from samsara. So craving and volition are not the same. When volition is the will to do wholesome thing is called kusala chanda. Will to do unwholesome thing is called akusala chanda. That has craving. Kusala chanda doesn't have craving. There may be some desire to do wholesome things as long as we have ignorance. When ignorance is eliminated, kusala chanda is pure, clean, and then there is no craving because there is no ignorance. Where there is no ignorance, no craving. And therefore kusala chanda without ignorance, without craving, is a wholesome volition.
So, Bhante, is Kamma or volition is the same or different?
Kamma and volition, again, so long as we have a desire, it turns into Kamma. If there is no desire, that is not Kamma. For Kamma there has to be desire. Where there is desire, there is ignorance. When these two exist, Kamma exists. When it is free from ignorance and desire, that is not Kamma. Volition is to get rid of suffering. And when we say we have your question is difference between Kamma and volition. Volition.
Or is it the same or different? So,
volition and Kamma are not the same. In order to make something Kamma, greed and ignorance must be present. If the greed and ignorance are not present, volition is not a Kamma. For instance, the Buddha has a volition to teach Dhamma, or an Arahant may have volition to teach Dhamma. In that state, they don't have Kamma, they don't commit Kamma. Kamma always has the underlying tendency of greed and ignorance. Yeah. Could you read these questions?
Sure. Could you explain with an example how Asada, Adinawa, and Nisarana apply in relationship to the Four Noble Truths?
Okay. How Asada, Adinawa, Nisarana can be explained in relation to Four Noble Truths. Asada is the gratification. That is the first noble truth, because where there is gratification, there is suffering. It sounds very contradictory, but it is very true. Where there is asada, enjoyment, along with the enjoyment, suffering also exists. What we enjoy is not permanent. Whatever is not permanent is suffering. What is impermanent is suffering. Yada nityang tan dukkhang, Buddha said. Whatever impermanent is suffering. So asada, therefore, is definitely it definitely belongs to the first noble truth, suffering. Adinava, also suffering. Asada, Adinava both go together into the suffering category. Nisarana belong to the third noble truth, Nibbana. That is getting rid of cause of suffering. And this is how these three related to the Four Noble Truths. When we say the Nisarana belongs to the third noble truth, this also implies what should we do to practice Nisarana. Nisarana means abandoning, letting go. In order to let go, we have to have a Noble Eightfold Path. That is, we have to understand why we want to let go. So we understand why. Because it is suffering. And then we have to think rightly, speak rightly, act rightly, make livelihood rightly, make effort rightly, practice mindfulness, right mindfulness, and right concentration. One leads to the other. So, Nisarana definitely belongs to the third noble truth and the fourth noble truth. The Asada Adinawa belong to the first noble truth and the second noble truth. Okay.
Thank you, Bhante. Bhante, is it important to practice or to know, distinguish between two kinds of contact when you mentioned about impingement contact and designation contact?
Right.
And if so, how that can help? Or the main point is, just to be clear, the causal or the main point is just to be clear about the causal relationship and focus to see the impermanent. So basically about practice, how to apply that.
Okay. Actually, you don't deliberately focus your mind on impingement contact and the designation contact. This is very normal, natural occurrence that happens to us. Whenever we have a contact, these two contacts always come together. None of these contacts exist by itself. Designation is the physical, impingement is mental. Whenever we experience through our senses, experience anything, sound, sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, body and mind object. These sight, sound and so forth definitely start with designation contact through the eye. Eye is the agent, ear is the agent, nose is the agent, tongue is the agent, body is the agent for the contact to bring to the mind. And then they all converge in the mind and they all impinge in our mind. And that happens naturally. There is a process. We don't deliberately focus the mind on one of them. We just take the contact as one. That can be especially the what do you call this senses. When Buddha always talk about senses, then sensory object, consciousness and contact. This is a general way. And there he does not make the distinction between impingement and designation contact. Because when the contact arises through the eye, without the mind contact, I cannot have contact. Consciousness must be there. So, eye is material, consciousness is mental. Mentality, materiality must come together in order to complete contact. And then how we use it for meditation, any contact rises and falls very quickly. Once eye contact, the entire process goes to the mind contact, it happens so quickly, you have no way to measure the speed, so quickly, but we only know that contact appears and disappears as quickly as anything else. That is the part we use for meditation. That is impermanence of contact, impermanence of eye, visual objects, consciousness, and contact. These four happen so quickly, immediately after that we begin to feel. As soon as we feel, we recognize it. This whole series takes place at very inconceivable rapidity. So distinguishing one from the other is virtually impossible. But we only know that they rise and fall very quickly. That much is enough for us to understand impermanence. And therefore, that is how we use it as the object of impermanence meditation.
Thank you, Bhante. So next question is, Dear Bhante, according to yesterday's conversation, I understand that in order to eliminate suffering, we need to eliminate our consciousness, thus our intentions. Does this mean that enlightened beings don't have intentions and consciousness?
Yes, they do have both intention and consciousness. What they don't have is the greed. Greed attached to consciousness and intention. That is why Buddha said, Visankhara gatan chittang tanhanang khayamajjaga. After attaining enlightenment, he said, the mind became free from sankhara and liberated from craving. So, they have intention. That intention is not Kamma producing intention. They have consciousness. That consciousness does not have ignorance, which also is a part of Kamma producing agent. And therefore, they do have intention to teach, intention to walk, intention to eat, intention to move, intention to lie down, and so on. But none of them have greed or ignorance. They have consciousness free from greed and ignorance. Yes, the difference between their intention, ordinary person's intention, and ordinary person's intention and their consciousness, ordinary person intention, ordinary person consciousness, enlightened person's intention, enlightened person consciousness, do not have greed and ignorance, even though they have the same thing as we have. Like they have aggregates, 5 aggregates. Their aggregates are called 5 aggregates, but their aggregates are not called 5 aggregates of clinging. Upadana khanda. They have khanda means aggregates, but they don't have upadana, clinging to the 5 aggregates or subject to clinging. So that's the difference.
Thank you, Bhante. Next question is, planning for the future is necessary for functioning in life. How does one remain mindful and also address the future?
Could you read the question again?
Yeah. Planning for the future is necessary for functioning in life. How does one remain mindful and also address the future?
Planning for the existence.
Planning for the future is necessary for functioning.
Planning for the future.
But how does one remain mindful and also address the future?
Okay. Planning is necessary for the future, definitely in the material world, material success, in your building, job and teaching, whatever you do as for living or for your life, for continuation of your life, for many, many things, planning is very, very important. But for practicing mindfulness, there is no plan. We just become mindful. And also while you are planning, you have to plan mindfully. That means these plans can change. Then what I should do? Well, when they change, I adjust according to the changes and remain mindful. That means remain without getting upset, because things are impermanent. We are operating in impermanent existence. Any plan can be impermanent. In some tradition, there is a man plan, God disposes. So you plan, it is subject to change. And we have to keep that mind in our mind. That is mindfulness. Mindfully you plan very well. If everything goes according to the plan, you continue to do that, still keep mindfulness in you. Okay? That's also a good question.
Now, next question is Bhante, like rather is comment and question.
Mm-hmm.
All material things will lead to suffering. The moment you come to suffering state because of material thing, you try to avoid that suffering by taking the corrective action to avoid that suffering. Therefore, you will get happiness again, and you do not see Adinawa. According to Dhamma, is it okay to avoid such suffering, or to live with that suffering, focusing the Nisarana and Adinava and pay off such karma?
Okay. You cannot avoid suffering so long as you have a desire and ignorance. What you have to eliminate is, what you have to let go, practice Nisarana. Nisarana means letting go, letting go, letting go. You have to let go of your craving for pleasure, craving for enjoyment. You have to let go of that craving. That is Nisarana, because craving definitely has Adinava. Adinava always is painful, suffering. Nisarana always has peace, happiness. Nisarana has Anisansa. Adinava has what you call suffering. Adinava is suffering, Nisarana is Anisansa. No, I'm sorry, Asada has suffering, Asada has Adinava, Nisarana has Anisansa. Asada means enjoyment, pleasure. It has definitely Adinava. And Nisarana definitely has Anisansa. So, you accept the suffering as it is, and don't get involved in suffering, and just understand this suffering is very natural as long as I have greed and ignorance. So I must learn to let go of the cause of suffering. You cannot eliminate suffering without eliminating the cause. Cause is greed. So Adinava is suffering, Asada is bringing peace. So you say, you will get happiness again, and you do not see Adinawa. You do not see Adinawa because you have ignorance. So according to Dhamma, is it okay to avoid such suffering? You cannot avoid suffering until you avoid ignorance and craving. Okay?
Thank you, Bhante.
Is another question?
Yeah. So it's like follow-up question related with previous question. We say that wholesome thoughts like metta produce also kamma, but positive. Does this mean that wholesome intentions produce kamma only when there is also greed?
Surely. Until you attain a state of enlightenment, that is called liberation from greed. That's described with the Vivek Nisritang, Viraga Nisritang, Nirodha Nisritang, Vasagga Parinaming, 4 qualities. Viveka. Viveka means Kaya Viveka, Chitta Viveka, Upati Viveka. Kaya Viveka means physical freedom, physical vacation, so to say, Viveka. Chitta Viveka means mental vacation, meaning attaining jhanas. Upati Viveka means liberating mind from defilements. Kaya Viveka, Chitta Viveka, Upati Viveka. So you have physical freedom, vacation, no activities of various kind of activity that brings you agitation, excitement and so on, restlessness, so forth. Chitta Viveka means attaining jhanas, subsiding your hindrances. Upati Viveka means overcoming remaining defilements. So this is a Viveka associated with these kind of 3 types of vacations. Vivekanisam, Viraganishitam, associated with non-greed viraga. Nirodhanishitam, associated with cessation, liberation, vasagga, letting, what do you call, Nisarana. And Viraganishitam, Vasagga Parinami. Vasagga means complete liberation. You are bending upon or gearing towards total liberation. With this state of mind, if you commit something that does not produce kamma, that will bring you suffering again and again and again. So, otherwise you commit kamma.
Even though it's wholesome, it's a good kamma, but you commit kamma.
Good kamma that brings you to heavens, Brahma realms, good human birth, with suffering.
But suffering.
Even if you become a Brahma, you are born with suffering, Brahma suffering. If you are born as a divine being, you are born in divine life with the divine suffering.
There's no escape until you really attain, like as you mentioned, these 4 states.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, therefore, no matter where you are born with suffering. And the best is not to be born at all.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay. Okay, with this the end of this morning's session. I think this is a good question. That's how we have to listen to Dhamma. Think of Dhamma, think of questions. You practice investigation of Dhamma, factor of enlightenment. That's very important. So keep thinking of good questions. All right, now I want to make our final wish. May all those who are in hospitals, we begin with them. After all this outside medical field, after doing all these things, finally end up in hospital because they are suffering. And they are taken care of by very compassionate doctors, nurses, and hospital staffs. May they all recover very soon and return to normal health and continue their life in good health and liberate from samsaric suffering. May all the doctors and nurses and hospital staffs who dedicate their life, sacrificing their comfort, risking their life to help these people out of compassion, may they not be affected by this virus and so on, and continue their noble service and live long in good health. And all those who are afflicted by losing their loved ones, grief-stricken, may they be free from that grief, understanding Dhamma, live in normal life, continue practice Dhamma, and liberate from samsaric suffering. Those very compassionate, far-sighted, wise leaders who have given leadership, encouraging people to get vaccinations and maintaining all health advices to protect themselves. These are wonderful leaders, and also they are sharing the wealth and achievements like vaccination. Rich people who can afford to share their vaccination with other countries, they do so because of their wonderful leadership. May they continue their wonderful service and live long in very good health to serve the world. And those who are very generous and generously supporting others may continue their wonderful service for the benefit of all beings. And overall, all of them and all of you be well, happy and peaceful, live long in very good health. Thank you.
Thank you, Bhante.
Okay.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Bhante.
Bhante.
Sadhu,
Thank you,
sadhu.
Bhante.
Sadhu,
Thank you,
sadhu,
Bhante.
sadhu,
Sadhu, sadhu,
sadhu.
sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante.
Thank you, Bhante.